Hi everyone, thanks for being with me. I have an interesting idea I want to put forward with people today. Now, those of you that have been watching this channel and the Child Protection Party YouTube channel, and have been keeping a note of or abreast of where things sit in regard to child protection issues in particular, you'll know that I've kind of been at the forefront of that as president of the Child Protection Party, founder of the Child Protection Party, which has been operating now for over 7 years. And as a result of that experience, I have developed many ideas about how the Child Protection Party should be operating, and I've now backed away a little bit from that because at the end of the day, this is also about me finding other things to do. However, the issues that sit around child protection probably will never leave me. I'm still up to date on all the news and the chatter around child protection in particular. But one of the things I've often wanted to talk about, which I've never really done in an extremely constructive way, is about the abolition of the child protection system entirely. And there's a podcast called Upend, which is worth looking at, and I'll put a link to the description for that below, which is worth listening to just in relation to abolishing the child protection system and particularly what that would look like. And what Upend talks about is a way by which we can look to families and communities when it is necessary to intervene where a child is at risk. The interviewer, the guy's name I can't remember incidentally, but when you listen to the podcast, you'll be notified of who he is. He talks about the need to use the word abolish, but to recognise that being an abolitionist doesn't mean that you don't have a system or a progress or a process in place. What it does mean is that it is about saying that whatever the system currently is not working. There potentially is a better system, and we need to get rid of the old one in order to make way for something new and fresh. And I couldn't agree more that the child protection system, in the decades that I've been working in it, working with families and with social workers in that system, I know that it needs to be destroyed. So what would it look like if we chose to get rid of it? Now, there are many people who just will not listen to this sort of podcast and even entertain these sorts of ideas, because there are so many people who have a vested interest in the dysfunction that is the child protection system. Does the child protection system actually ultimately protect children, or is there an alternative way of looking at how this could work out? Well, there is. And one of the issues that was raised in this podcast, which I've supported for years, is more community involvement in this child protection system itself, particularly within Indigenous communities, where they understand better than anybody else that there are kinship arrangements that could be implemented. There's a community that would tend to wrap itself around those families that are struggling concerning child protection issues, domestic violence, and drug use, and so on. So there are ways by which the system can be managed differently. What we need to do in the first instance, though, is to have the people within this system, the people that currently run it, to recognise that perhaps they can start to do things differently than the way they have been. In order to do that, they need to recognise that the way they've been doing things has not been in the best interest of children. And the reason for that is that children die in care. Children's outcome from being in care is 3 or 4 times worse, I should say, than the general population, that their education outcomes are poor, the likelihood of criminality increases because kids are in care. So we should be looking at what happens when a child is placed in care. What does that do to them? How are they traumatised? The presenter in the podcast, in the Upend podcast, stated that he realised that children are not saying, I need to leave this home, I don't love my parents, I want to be taken away, I want a different place to live. What they are saying is, I want I want my parents to stop behaving in ways that I find are harmful. And if systems could be put in place that could help parents to better understand what it is that they're doing that is unhelpful for their children, then perhaps their children could stay not necessarily always with them, but certainly within the community or within a kinship arrangement. So we need to be thinking more about how can we do that that's going to be more effective than what we've done in the past. Now, there are elements of the child protection system that will simply say, well, we do our best to look for kinship families to look after these children. Well, actually, you friggin' don't. That's crap. The first place we always look is amongst other family members. We look widely, we look broadly. I've seen so many instances where they've said that and then they've rejected whoever the person is that would otherwise be available to look after the kids. And the reasons why they reject them are often founded on very little at all. And the investigation that takes place, if someone's got a drug record or in the past, or they've got some other violation, then that's just automatically ticked off. There's no real great interview process. There's no extension of that process in terms of looking to other people. They kind of reach a dead end. It's too hard for the department, too much of an effort, so it's better if we just remove the kids from the families. Now, that system does not work. And also the other system they have is family group conferencing. So you'll find that they'll say, well, look, this is in the best interest of the kids. We want all the family to get together about what should be the arrangements in relation to these children. When it gets to that point, they've already removed the child, they've already made decisions about what is in the best interest of the child, and they get this reluctant family members and parents and everybody to come along and have this discussion, which ostensibly looks like they're attempting to do the right thing. They're not. An absolute waste of time. You're not saying to the parents, well, look, I think that there's a possibility that you can have the kids back. Let's look at other arrangements that can be in place until that actually happens, until you've rectified the issues that brought the kids to our attention in the first place. What family members could best look after these kids? Who would you like to be looking after them and why? Those sort of issues are not brought forward when it comes to these particular types of meetings. They're more about, this is the arrangement we would like, how often would you like to see the kids, who would you like to see, what grandparents and other family members would you like to have access to these children, how would you like to arrange that, blah, blah, blah. Nothing is ever about, what arrangements would you like before these kids go into care? What would you like to do? That sort of situation does not occur. The other thing, too, that we need to identify is the racist comments, the racist version, the prejudices that people have, that workers have around kids. Now, we know that far more Indigenous kids are removed than white kids on a basis of percentage of population. And this is because the government itself and those that work for it are prejudicial in terms of their understandings around children. This is why things like The Voice are so important, because that will offer opportunities for people to talk about what they would like to have happen within their communities in relation to child protection. But in order to get there, child protection workers and the department have to make decisions about what it is that they need to do in order to release their hold on and their sense of, I guess, I'm trying to think of the word. It's kind of an obligation they think they have to hold on these kids in order to save them somehow, without realising that the only way that they could probably save most kids is by ensuring that the family and the communities are the ones that are making decisions about how they should be cared for. I think we often, and I've talked about this many times, we've often ignored, or the department ignores, the trauma that is created simply by a child being removed. They don't understand what that means for the child. They don't understand how that will impact them as they progress through life. They don't understand what their actions do, how they cause the trauma that will impact these kids. And also, they don't seem to take responsibility at all for the number of foster placements that a child has. Or they don't take responsibility for the type of residential care facilities that they place these children in, and then the children find themselves abused and so forth while in those. So the other reason why it needs to be abolished is because there's no accountability for the system itself when it fucks up. None at all. They just allow it to continue without addressing the primary issues. And the primary issues will never be changed as long as workers, managers, and the department itself refuse to understand what it is they do that limits the best outcomes for children who are at risk of harm. And, I've always argued that sometimes it's better for a child to remain in what would appear ostensibly a harmful environment than it would be on occasions to have them removed from that environment as well, providing the parents are working through the issues that have brought the attention of the department to them. So there are many things that we could do in order to change this system, but I really do believe that it needs to be abolished. We need to rip it apart and we need to start again. And I don't believe, and I'll reframe that, I believe that there is no one in government, in a child protection system, who has a semblance of courage to be able to revamp, demolish, start from the ground up the child protection system as it stands today. There's a young man I work with who has had his child removed from him. I have been working with, because I don't do that work anymore, but in more recent times, where it is evident that he could have been the father that his daughter needed. There's no disputing that whatsoever. Extremely dedicated guy to the well-being of his child. And the child's placed in a foster arrangement which is manipulative. The foster parents are manipulative and controlling. And this has damaged this child to the point whereby she doesn't want to visit the father anymore, and the department has facilitated that. Now, that process in itself is damaging to this child, but the department allows it to exist. They often they act as if they're powerless in these situations. In actual fact, they have all the power under the sun. What they don't have is the guts to be able to stand up to what they see as powerful foster parents or influential foster parents. And then we've got, on the other hand, we've got a system around adoptions and foster parenting in general that's crying out for more funding, for more recognition, so that their agendas can be fulfilled. So, who are we going to? What kids are we going to have up for adoption if we implement a system whereby the community and families take care of those children? Well, there would hardly be any. What children? Who would be running those systems, the foster families, the kinship care arrangements, and the adoption services, if there was no children available for any of those services? Now, these are the realities, in my view, around child protection system. And I think we need to do something about it. I'll be interested to know what you think, and if you would like to subscribe, please do so. Subscribe to my show. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want to make any comments, please make them down below so I can get back to you. If you've got any ideas about how to do this, if you've got comments that you'd like to make, or you'd like to have a conversation with me about what it is that you would like to do or what you would like to see happen, please make contact with me, and then we could organise a chat, maybe a chat here, to talk about that in greater detail. Thanks everybody for being with me. Take care. Look after yourselves and be safe.